Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be doing a hands-on data types, Python data types. So I believe that before seeing this video, you have an idea about Python data types. We have the under the numeric data types, we have the integers, we have the floats, and we have the complex. But under the non-numeric data types, we have the strings, we have the booleans. So those are the common primitive data types that we have. So for this particular exercise, we are going to be classifying some certain variables into their appropriate data types. So a string is a collection of data, of characters rather, and a boolean is a two-state data type, basically true or false. Then the integers, the floats, the complex are basically numbers. So let's move into it. For this first one over here, a name is a collection of characters. So a name is essentially going to be a string. Then an address, let me so an address is also a collection of characters. So I will want to classify it as a string. A phone number now, a phone number is going to be something like plus, for example, I'm recording this video from Nigeria, it's going to be something like plus 234 something something something, then the plus at the back, very very important. Or if you are calling locally, it will be something like 080 or 090 070 or something like that. So the phone number to be stored, I think, in my honest opinion, I will save this as a string as well. The reason is because I'm not doing any numerical calculations or numerical computations with it. So why save it as a number? It can't even be a number because if I save 080 something 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 as a number, Python will automatically remove the first zero over there, and that is not what I want. So for the phone, and if it's a phone number where I have spaces and I have the plus sign at the beginning of the phone number, then I have a problem because Python will not regard the spaces, so I might be getting errors. Also, the preceding plus, the plus over there, Python will just treat it as a positive number, and I'm not, I have no intentions of it being a positive number. So just to play safe, I'll classify it as a string. So Python will recognize the plus sign, and Python will also recognize the spaces if it has any. So for um, the date of birth, well, Python has a library called dates. Python has a library called dates, so you can basically import dates. You can import datetime rather. So datetime is the name of the library. So if you want to do anything that has to do with date, you can just work with it in this format, in this particular format over here. So if you decide to treat, because on the long run, date is going to be something like maybe 12, say 04 to 021. So a date, naturally, this is what it will look like, or you might just be this slash that is going to be having. So originally, just to save me stress, I think I might just want to save it as a string. I might just want to save it as a string. But if it's in a program where I have the luxury of using this date time, I'd rather just save it as a date time class. So that way, it will save me a lot of stress. So, but for now, I'll just treat it as a string. I'll treat it as a string. Okay, now age. Now age is a number, so it can't be a string. Age is a number, so it cannot be a string. So you hear people say, I'm 30 years old, I'm 21 years old, I'm 19, and all of that. You can never hear somebody saying, I'm 19.5 years old. Or you can say something like 30.4 years old, or you understand, it can never be a floating point number. It can never be It can only be a whole number. There is no floating point part. There is no like, I don't want to use the word decimal because that's the wrong, that's something wrong to say. It's a floating point number. A decimal is a number in base 10. Just take note. So there's no floating point part. It is a whole number, and a whole number it is for an age. You are either 26 or you are 27. There is nothing like 26.2 or 26.5 years old. No, nobody does that. So for age, the type is going to be integer. The type is going to be integer. So for this car plate number, I think some car plate number consists of both alphabets and numbers. It is not always numbers throughout. I don't have a car, so I don't know what the plate number will. I'm just thinking based on what I've seen around, but I think plate numbers consist of alphabets and numbers. So to save me stress, I'll just save it as a string. Just save it as a string. Now the marital status. Marital status. For this marital status, all the possible options that we have single, married, widowed, separated, engaged. So, and as you can see, all of these options are, it can be a boolean because it is not two states. If it were only two options that we have, we might look for a way to maneuver it into it being a boolean, but it cannot be a boolean. So, if you're writing a robust program, all the options that we've had is what? Maybe, I said, let me just, single, married, engaged, engaged, single, married, engaged, widowed, divorced, and separated. Okay, so these are the options that we have for marital status. Now, most likely, if you are working on a robust program where you have to store the value in a database, what I would do, what I would do normally is to say maybe single equal to one. Let one represent single. Married will be two. Engaged will be three. Widowed, no, this should be widowed. Widowed will be four. Divorced will be five, and separated will be six. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and this data is going to be saved in a database. It might be somebody's profile. So when they visit the page, or if for one reason or the other I have to extract the person's profile, I'm going to be seeing this as a number. But when it gets to my program, I will look for a way to match the number to any of all these options over here. So for me, I would say marital status. If I have this, the luxury of using this, I would say marital status, I'll treat it as an integer. If I have the luxury of classifying them as numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if I cannot, if I'm in an environment where I can't use all these numbers over here, then guess what? I'll just go with single, married, engaged, widowed, which is a string. So it can be an integer or a string, all depending on usage. So for this account balance, when your bank sends you your bank account statement and all that, when they send you the credit alert, debit alert, and all that, they don't send you a whole number, they send you a floating point number. So this is not even an argument. Account balance is a float data type, it's a float. So don't let us dwell much on it. This is a float. So for the score, well, to my to the best of my knowledge, a score is a number. A score is a number. So I will classify it as an integer or a float, basically. Integer or a float. So for grade, well, to the best of my knowledge, grades are normally alphabets. Grades are alphabets. Grade A, grade B, grade C, your driver's license, grade, you took an exam based on the score, they give you a grade and all that. So for grade, I'll say string. So for number of years, you can have 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and all that. You cannot hardly have I seen a place where this. Okay, when you're calculating simple interest, sometimes the problem might specify that you have maybe 4.5 years. Okay, 4.5 years. Well, for the number of years, normally I would want to classify it as a whole number. So, well, let me just say integer and float, depending on usage. Depending on usage. Depending on usage, it can be an integer and it can be a float. Now, HIV test result can either be positive or negative. Now, since I have the luxury of just two possible outcomes, I will declare this as a boolean. I'll classify this as a boolean because I have only two possible outcome. HIV test results, true or false. True for positive, false for negative. Boolean does the job perfectly. So for gender, normally we have only male, female. The same thing that we did under single, married, engaged, widowed, divorced. It might also apply to maybe one for female, then two for male. One for female and two for male. Then that way we can separate it into strings, integers, and all that. So we can separate it into either a string or an integer. So if we have the luxury of using one for male or female, then two for the other one, then we can use it as a string. But if we are not in an environment where we can just specify that explicitly, then we can just go with um, number or string, calculate number. No, marital status, yes, it should be integer or string. Integer or string, what am I doing? Okay, so for other IDs, now other IDs are normally contain a number. It's an alphanumeric data type. So let's just classify as a string outrightly. So it can contain numbers and it can contain alphabets. So that way we are on the safe side. It's not as if we want to do any numerical calculations with it. So we just have it as a string. Then for password is a string. No need to, because you can be having one uppercase, two lower cases, two lowercase characters rather, then one special character and all that. So let's just treat it as a string. Now 4-digit pin, everywhere I have to put a 4-digit pin is a number. So it's a whole number. So let me just classify this as a, well, it's not as if I want to do any numerical calculations with the pin. So let me still save it as a string, yes. Let me still save it as a string. Although I might decide to save it as an integer too, because it is not a floating point data type. So whichever one I do, I'm actually safe. I can save it as a string or an integer. Okay, so let me take this one out. So, well, for all these data types, just there are so many other data types you can possibly talk about, but just for educational purposes, I have to limit to these ones. So thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel too. Thanks. Bye.